Excellent. Hello, everybody. How are we doing today, Mr.
Uh,
Lee?
I'm doing all right. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks, but also relaxing. The last weekend
Both.
anyway has so I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Well, in that case, everybody, this is Ready Set Data. I'm Anthony Fortner, data engineer, and with me is Lee Markham, database administrator. Yay! So
Hello.
happy to see everybody in their smiling faces or avatars or even you chatbots. I'm glad to see you chatbots. You know what? I'll take any attention I can get at this point. So I think today we're talking about the past data community summit. It's a lot of
Yes,
words. Did I say that right?
you did.
Awesome. Unless there's something else you want to touch on first. I know the big bulk of this is going to be that, but I don't know if you have any other announcements or anything else you want to kind of
uh,
roll over first. Or
nope. We can jump right in. I don't have any announcements or anything to cover. So I mean, tonight I just wanted to give people an overview of the my experience at the past data community summit. So you would know what to experience or what the experience might be like for you if you've never been to one, and just get to hear some of my story about what I did and what that was like. So gonna kind of just
that's
give a breakdown. So I don't know why this is first. This is just the first thing that came to mind. But so the first thought I put out there was there's continental breakfast unless you sign up for a sponsored breakfast to get hot food. Now, that's probably the first thing I thought of because I'm a big breakfast person. So it, that's that was my first thought, I guess. So there is hot food there if you go to a sponsored breakfast, and there are places, if that's not your thing, there are places around there that you could go to get breakfast if you wanted to do that sort of thing. Secondly, lots and lots and lots of community related events and opportunities. Most of the stuff is after hours. So there this time I think on Monday after the pre-conference session, there was a donut shop hangout that was sponsored by a company called Minionware. I ended up not going to that because I ended up with other plans that evening with some folks that I invited to go to dinner. And plus, donuts not really something I should be consuming, so I created other plans for myself.
it's good for your
Um,
soul, though, right?
that's right.
So
Uh,
minion wear. I'm imagining yellow people with goggles.
yes,
Oh,
yes,
that'd be great.
it's
What's
pretty
minion
similar
wear?
to that. Um, yeah, it's by so Minionware is owned by Sean and Jennifer McCown. They're uh, pretty well known in the SQL Server community. They have a platform called Minionware Enterprise or Minion Enterprise, one of the two. And so they sponsored a donut hangout time after the pre-conference session. I believe that was on Monday. There's
I
also
just
something called a SQL run that happens. I did not participate because you have to get up way early and I don't run. So those two things made it a no go for me.
so
But there's a big
you had two good reasons not to.
that's
Yeah.
right.
Before we run away from the donut shop hangout,
Okay.
minion wear. I just love. You're going to mention community more than once in here. I'm sure of it. But I just want to point out the fact that you knew who started the company, you knew what they did. I just the only prompt was you said the name of the company, asked, and made a little joke, and you know who these people are. You didn't even it sounds like you didn't even do the donut shop thing, but you knew exactly who they were. So that's great. That shows kind of the community that is around the data platform or down SQL Server, right? I'm not sure
Yeah.
which one to go with actually. So it's past Data Community Summit. So it's not strictly SQL Server. SQL Server.
Um
Or is it?
it it
Was it the company?
is SQL Server centric.
Okay.
The so it used to just in the olden days just used to be called PASS. Actually, it used to be
Mhm.
called which PASS stood for Professional Association of SQL Server. And so then they just started calling it PASS so that they could focus on the broader technology of SQL Server, like Power BI, business intelligence, do things with integration services and analysis services to try to widen things. And then along came this thing called the cloud, which made things even more broad. So it's just called now, it's just the Redgate PASS Data Community Summit, because a couple of years ago now, PASS was purchased by Redgate, in part because some folks who were at Redgate have been central to the community from the beginning, and they wanted to keep things going. And so they talked it over and eventually made a purchase of the assets of the PASS business. And the last two summits were virtual. One was the last summit by PASS, and then last year there was a virtual summit hosted by Redgate. This year was a hybrid event, so it was in person at Seattle, or in Seattle at the convention center, and also online worldwide for registered attendees, which we'll get to in a minute or later on. But yeah, a little history lesson for PASS there.
Also, well, not everybody who sees this will know what PASS is. We kind of just glossed over it. We basically said, you went to PASS, and we're going to talk about it, but what is it? And then also, I just wasn't clear myself. Like, is it still SQL specific or not? I know a lot of these conferences and meetups start out on one subject, and over time, different interests will come in. Like you said, like cloud is a thing now. Maybe that's taken over the conversation, right? So I honestly was just curious whether it was SQL specific still or not.
Yeah, it's still SQL Server focused. Even when we're talking about cloud, we're talking about SQL Server in the cloud. We're talking about Azure or AWS is also present as a sponsor. So there were some sessions hosted by AWS speakers, and I think they had a pre-con as well. But it's still focused on SQL Server in AWS. So there wasn't a focus on NoSQL. We weren't talking about MongoDB or CouchDB, Cockroach, any of the other things that we talked about a few weeks ago when you and I were talking about. Yeah. So very SQL Server focused. It is still, I believe, the world's largest conference for SQL Server professionals to attend. Although there are some others which we can talk about at a later time. So that's an oversight on my part. So I appreciate that. Not everybody's going to know what PASS is. So that's a briefish history lesson on PASS. Because it was in person in Seattle, I was able to go this year, and thus the words about the continental breakfast versus hot breakfast, whichever one you prefer. Initially. And then we dove into community related events. So I talked about the donut shop thing, which I ended up skipping because for reasons. I did catch up with Jennifer. Jennifer McCown was there. I did catch up with her, and we'll talk more about that in another part of this. They have something called the SQL Run. I think we got to that. Yeah. So there were people who are really into running and health and fitness in the community. And so if you are into that, or even if you just want to tag along during the SQL Run, you can get up early and do a SQL Run before the conference sessions that day. So I think the SQL Run was the first day of the actual conference. Monday and Tuesday are what they're called pre-cons or pre-conference sessions. So they're all-day sessions that you sign up for and pay extra for to cover in depth a particular topic. On Monday, yes, I think Monday, doesn't matter which day. One of the 2 days, I had a pre-conference with Paul Randall as the main speaker, and he had his wife Kimberly Tripp there, and that was on performance troubleshooting SQL Server with weights and latches. And so that was, it was a great pre-con. And then on day 2, I was in the SQL Server 2022 workshop with Bob Ward and other Microsoft folks. Both pre-cons were well attended. and they were both very helpful and informative pre-conference sessions. And after those pre-cons, then we have cool community stuff like I'm telling you about now, or in the case of the sequel run, is actually early in the morning. Tuesday night, there were two things happening. There was what I'm calling a pre-welcome event networking hour. So just in this big room in in the convention center buildings, there was a place where you could come in and just catch up with people, make connections with folks before you actually went to the welcome event itself. And so that was really fun. It was interesting. Probably, I'm going to guess, maybe there were 50-ish people in the pre-welcome event. And
did that feel like a lot to you?
I mean, it wasn't overwhelming or anything. I don't think it was a lot. The room would hold way more than the number of people who were there. But I met some cool people from Sweden and talked with them a couple of different times throughout the event. They run a business intelligence company. I met Edwin Sarmiento. He actually sought me out. And so we talked for a little while. He's a great guy. Talked with him online a bit. So that's how I know him. And he's big in the high availability and disaster recovery space for SQL Server. Yeah, and so that pre-welcome event was pretty interesting. I'm glad I went. And the Tuesday night welcome event was like a big old party. It was spread out across the size of like maybe a third of a Walmart size area. It was quite large. And
welcome to America, we measure things in the Walmarts, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking in my head, like, how can I tell you how big it was?
Right. No. Right. Yeah.
I mean, there was a large space, and they had at one point a drumline band came up, and some people with cymbals, and they had a big old music thing happening. It was pretty entertaining.
I bet the music thing was awesome. Yeah.
It was. I recorded part of it. I have that on my phone. And they had games there. So they had the basketball hoop arcade game that you see at places. They had different I think they had Miss Pac-Man and some other true arcade type games like that were also there. And there was a ton of food, and it was all good.
Arcade games and food. I think this sounds like a good time to me.
Yeah. Yes. It was awesome. The event was interesting. I did know a few people. I'm not as connected. Before I went, obviously, I was not as connected as I am now.
Ooh, okay. Networking was effective. Sounds like it.
Yes, networking was effective. Absolutely. And, part of that was because of the SQL community itself. So I ran into, or actually I sought out a person who I knew was at the event, said hi to him, and told him like, hey, I'm here by myself. I didn't come to the conference with anyone. No one from my company came, and so that made it a little tough for me. It's the first time I've been to a tech conference by myself, I think, and so there's not that built-in social aspect. You don't have built-in dinner plans and all of that sort of thing.
Yeah, you don't have that person tagging along, or that person you can tag along with, whichever wording you prefer.
Yeah, exactly.
It helps me. It helps me a lot.
Yeah, it does. And so I was telling him that, and he was like, "Well, here, let's go introduce you to some folks." And I was like, "Yes, thanks, Andy Yoon. I would love that." And so Andy's a great guy. I've met him online through LinkedIn and chatted, and we've had some different interactions over the last year or two, maybe, I don't know. And so he introduced me to a bunch of great people, and so that was fun to to get to know some more community folks, because someone else in the community said, here, let me take you over here and introduce you so that you know some people here. That was really great. Also met his wife, Deborah Melkin. She actually helped me with some preparation for an abstract that I was going to submit. Just great people at the community and the Sequel family. They want to get to know everyone, and they want everyone to feel comfortable. Mm-hmm. And no one. It's interesting because I wish I had the link to supply, but maybe we can put it in the video comments later. Paul Randall actually wrote a blog post after the event, and one of the things he talked about was, sure, there are folks who are more well known, but that's because those folks are blogging and tweeting and doing things. But I think he actually said, we all put our pants on one leg at a time, just like everyone else, so right. They're very open and welcoming. It was fantastic. Let's see. So one of the cool ways that you meet people at conferences is obviously when everybody has to sit down and eat. And that's true at the past community summit. One of the cool things was that we all had these very large badges. They were probably about this big, and they had stickers on them.
The size of your head?
Yes, the size of my head. No, I mean, they were like
pretty big.
They were large and easily readable. And I'm sure that was the purpose, because you want people to be able to read your name and know who you are and that sort of stuff. And
that already be in like hugging distance, right? Like before hugging distance, you gotta know, hey, that's so and so.
And they have stickers that you can put along the bottom. Some people had multiple stickers, so they had their name part, their name card, and then they would have this much of stickers of different things that they supported, like women in technology. You could have a sticker for being a first-time attendee. There was a sticker for all the speakers and that sort of stuff. And I had a speaker tag because I was a speaker, was doing an online live session, and the large tag and the speaker part really served as an icebreaker. People would look, and you could watch them looking at your tag to see, okay, who is this person? What do they do? Why are they here? And lots of people asked me, oh, I see you're a speaker. What are you talking about? And it was a great conversation starter. It makes things so much easier. I think you know that IT people, tech people can be a little introverted and awkward, and we don't quite know what to say to each other sometimes. And that really helped.
Yeah.
There were, so that's breakfast and lunch. And then, so what do we do about dinner? There were some dinner plans. I think there were a couple of formal like community events for dinner. I don't remember what those were. Which obviously means I probably didn't go to them, but that was...
You didn't find them as interesting as whatever you did do.
Well, so what happened is on Sunday afternoon, I got connected with a couple of other people who invited me to dinner that evening.
Awesome.
And one of them was like, so when you get to dinner time, or as you approach dinner time, just find some people and ask them if they have plans. And if they don't have plans, say, do you want to go to dinner with me? I'm finding some folks to go to dinner with. And so I did that. And that's how I ended up at dinner most nights of the week, with different people. And so that was kind of fun to do awesome. As well.
Sounds intimidating to me.
It was. Yeah. Hi, will you go to dinner with me? Yeah. I get that. But I did it anyway. It was a great suggestion. I'm like, I know it's a little awkward maybe, but we're all in the same awkward boat. Everybody here has to figure out dinner plans.
It's true.
So there were a few amazing restaurants that I went to. Well, I call them amazing. I was pretty impressed with them. I liked them. And visited those same places frequently, because once I find a few places I like to eat, I just keep going back to them. That's just who I am. Um, so
Yeah. Stick
that
with
was
what
pretty
you
cool.
know, stick with what you like. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. They're inside the community center. So the community center is actually, or the convention center. The convention center is actually two buildings on opposite sides of the street,
Yep.
and there's a sky bridge that connects them. Well, inside the convention center are other businesses, including restaurants. And so I actually went to a place called Taco Del Mar a couple of times, and it was kind of like a Qdoba Chipotle kind of place, which is right up my alley. I love that kind of food. Um, the
I'm
Sky
getting hungry
Bridge.
just talking about it.
Sorry. Um, the community zone or the Sky Bridge that connected the two parts of the convention center is where they had the community zone, and basically that was just a big open space, literally over the road, that had chairs, couches, tables, that sort of thing, and people just hung out and talked. And there was a lot of that because
Awesome.
this is the first year. This is the first year that they had an in-person session or in-person summit for the last 2 years. So lots of people haven't seen each other since 2019.
Yeah, and that was the hallway track, which a lot of people
Yes.
say is the most important part of these conferences for the community. And we said that word, so pop up a lot, right? And I think it has.
Yeah, the hallway track was talked about a lot before the summit, and there were a lot of people in the hallway track. They were doing the hallway track.
Mm-hmm.
One person said that's all they were doing. They weren't going to go to any session. They were just
Yep.
going to hang out, and um, so that was pretty. That was pretty interesting. I really just think the sequel, what we call in the SQL community, the hashtag SQL family it's a real thing. I know some people might be tripped up by that family word because not everybody's family is fantastic. But to the point I made earlier, there are people who are more well known, but they're just people, and they'll tell you that they started knowing nothing about SQL Server, just like everyone else who's there. Whether you're well known or not, people are friendly. They want to get to know you, and they want to help you get to know other people and feel connected. So, a lot of people that I knew online, I met for the first time in person there, and people
I
like,
bet. I bet that was cool. I bet that was experience, right? These digital people, whoa, they're real. You got to meet them in the flesh and look
yeah,
them in the eyes, so to speak.
yeah, it was fantastic. And I began to, as I made those connections with people I knew online, and as I met new people, I began to understand more about why people from the SQL Server community and the SQL family were so excited about going back to Seattle. It's the thing they've always done, and they haven't seen these people in 3 years, and so they're excited to do that. So yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people I met. I took the time specifically to meet a person who I'm pretty sure she's from Sweden. I actually ran into her at the Tuesday night event. Her name's Catherine Wilhelmsen. Great community person. She was walking by, and I just kind of intercepted her, and she and I had a couple of conversations on LinkedIn as well. It was just fun to meet people that you've talked to online. So it was a great deal. Um,
Jay, you're not a bot.
right, you're a real person, and it's great to meet you. So I think I mentioned Andy Yoon. I ran into Chris Wood, a person that I've talked to online. He actually gave me one of my first speaking opportunities after New Stars of Data, and so that was pretty cool to meet him. Um, Another SQL, what I call SQL famous person, introduced me to Brent Ozar, who walked over, came up from behind me as I was talking to the other person, and introduced, and um, Brent, I think Brent recognized my name for a number of reasons. I'm sure not the least of which is that sometimes I comment on his stuff on LinkedIn. And so we, you know, 3, 4, 5 of us gathered around and telling stories, and it was a fun time. Yeah, so met Kevin Hill. He runs Dallas DBAs, which is a database consulting company. So it was great. So we've
That's
talked
awesome.
about food and community related events. So I guess the next thing really to think about in terms of what to expect at the community desk. Oh my gosh, I can talk really at the Past Data Community Summit is lots of walking. So we're all in downtown. There's lots of hotels around the convention center. And so you're close, like within 1 to 3 blocks. But you still have to walk that every morning and every night. You have to walk back and forth to different rooms within the convention center to get to the sessions. And then you have to walk around Seattle at night to go get dinner, for example. And so it's a lot of walking. So be prepared for that. Even though you're close and things are nearby, you're still going to walk a lot, and you're going to be carrying things like, your laptop bag and some other stuff so that you can, type out your notes for different sessions and that sort of thing. Lots of walking.
Got to train beforehand. Be ready.
Yes, that would be helpful. The people who do the SQL runs, no big deal because they already do their training every day.
Or it's worse for them because they just ran a 5K before the walking.
Yeah, I suppose that might be true as well. So the next thing, I guess, to think about in terms of what to expect at Past Data Community Summit was just obviously lots of learning opportunities. There were almost 400 speakers, and there were a little more than 400 sessions between live presentations at the convention center itself. So you had that. Secondly, you had live online streams. And then thirdly, you had pre-recorded sessions. And people who, I think all 3 formats were available to everyone who attended, whether it was in person or online. So even some of the in-person sessions were live streamed. So that was kind of interesting. And I think maybe the plan was for all of them. Maybe they all were, they live streamed things like the keynotes that kicked off the morning and that sort of stuff as well. But lots of learning opportunities. And so obviously you can't attend all of that content. It's not possible. But
on that note, I mean, so 400 speakers, 400 sessions, like it's got to be a challenge just to decide on where you're going to be and what you're going to watch, right? Or listen to or participate in. That sounds like a lot.
Yes. That's a great point that you bring up. So they have an app. There's an app for that. There really is. There's a Past Data Community Summit app. And on that app is the session catalog, and you can build your own schedule of what you plan to attend, whether that's the in-person sessions, and it'll give you the room numbers and or the room names. So all the named rooms were in one side of the convention center. All of the numbered rooms were in the other building on the other side of the street.
Interesting.
Yeah, it helped because you knew where at least what building you were supposed to be in. And there were a ton of signs, and there were a bunch of people standing around on both sides of the convention center that you could ask if you got lost or you needed to know where something was. Hey, I'm trying to find this room.
There's people who's just standing there, available to help. Well, that's nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it was incredibly nice. I used those folks a few times when I got turned around and wasn't quite sure where I was. And they were always very helpful. But yeah, the app lets you build a schedule, and you can see what you scheduled, what room it's in, and that sort of thing. And the speakers were encouraged to, and I think the Redgate folks did this. So when you turned in your PowerPoint presentation, and for those who did a recording, your recording or your demo scripts, all that. So your demo scripts and the PowerPoint were attached to that session within the catalog. So when you clicked it and made it a part of your schedule, then you could see there the links to get the PowerPoint and demo scripts. So you attend an in-person session, you pull this up, you sign in, you get to your schedule, and you can pull down the PowerPoint that the person is showing on the screen to help you kind of follow along. You can grab the demo scripts if there were demo scripts. So the next thing to think about or anticipate or expect is just your battle with jet lag. So
depending on where you come from, that's either bad or really bad, right?
exactly. Most the conferences that I've attended before have been one time zone over in the Mountain Time Zone, and that was not a big deal. Now I'm going 2 time zones, and that's only 2 hours. Lots of people were coming from Europe and Australia and other places, and I really felt awful for them. There were lots of people from Boston, and they talked about how it affected them. It's the start of their day now is 4 a.m. Pacific or whatever, and they're like wide awake because for them that's their body thinks it's 7 or 8 in the morning.
Yeah.
And so that was a big challenge. It was only 2 hours for me, but it really did mess with my sleep schedule. By the time I got to Friday, I was super exhausted. And so the next thing I would say or recommend related to that is to find or to plan on staying an extra night. So the pre-conference is Monday and Tuesday, and then the actual sessions or the actual conference is Wednesday to Friday. Well, if you book your flight on Friday, you're likely to miss the end of the conference on Friday. So that's one reason to stay. And then there's still, there was a community-led event that night. There was a community dinner at a seafood restaurant along the boardwalk there. But I did it because I thought, I'll stay one more day. I'll wake up in the morning, at least I hoped, mostly refreshed for my flight back. And so I would recommend for people to do that.
If possible.
Yeah, if you can do that. Obviously that's more expense. That's another night of hotel. That's potentially changes the cost of your flights because you're flying out over a weekend, a weekend morning and that sort of stuff. But I was able to make that work.
So did it work out good for you then?
Yeah, I think it did. Even though I was tired and hadn't slept well all week, Friday wasn't necessarily that different, but at least I wasn't at the end of my day trying to go home. So that was helpful for me. Last thing I want to tell you about is just kind of the story of how my presentation went and what that experience was like.
Okay.
So,
no spoilers, but this is going to be good.
I was a little surprised with about what I'm going to tell you to a certain degree, but then after a while, it kind of made sense. I ended up having to give my presentation from the hotel room, and it's a little surprising because you're thinking, wasn't Wi-Fi like everywhere? Yes, but when you have 1,500 people crammed into 2 buildings, everyone trying to use the Wi-Fi might not be so great. So Redgate's suggestion from early on was, if you're going to go do an online presentation, you're going to do a live stream, you're going to go attend a question and answer session that's part of people having watched your pre-recorded session already, You should do it from someplace not at the convention center. So I went back to my hotel room to do that. And my session was from 4 to 5 Pacific. And so I get back to my room, and there's, every room has a desk and a lamp and all that kind of stuff is arranged in the room. So when I sit down at the desk, and much like I am now, and I'm looking at a camera, I'm like, okay, this works, except that the bed is right there. So that seemed a little awkward. I'm like, yeah, I probably shouldn't do that. So I pulled the table out from the wall. I first had to actually unplug the electrical cord because there were electrical plugins and other pieces part of that table. So I had to unplug it. Tie clip. There were little clip ties that were holding it. I had to get the cord out of that so I could pull the desk far enough away from the wall that I could get the chair behind it. So then I would be facing the bed, facing the rest of the room. So once I got all that done, I got my computer set up, and I had my second laptop here. So I had 2 laptops, one I was going to use, and then one as a spares right next to each other. And I brought the camera that I'm using to stream with right now. I brought that with me just as a backup, just in case. And I'm really glad I did, because the camera I'm using right now actually has a little ring light as part of the camera.
Okay.
So I get this all set up, and the window is right here. There's a huge window here, and there's another window right here on the next part of the room. So I pull the curtain back. So there's a little light. So this part of me is like lit up. This part of me is really dark. I'm like, okay, what can I do? I turned some lights on, but the lights in the hotel room weren't very good. So I really wasn't a way to fix
compared to the sun.
Correct. Not compared to the sun. And so I'm like, what am I going to do? If I had some more time before I'd started rearranging the room, I would have done it differently. I think I would have actually pushed the bed further toward the window, and then moved the table over there, because there was a huge window, and I could have faced that window to give my presentation, and that would have worked. But I didn't think of that in time.
Somebody put a lot of thought and effort into setting up that room, a lot of work, and you just took all of their work.
Yeah, I was just going to mess everything up by rearranging the whole room. But, then I'm going to have to put it all back together, because then I'm like, I don't want to get an extra charge for, the wait staff, or the hotel staff having to like put the room back together. They'd be like, what did this weirdo do? Why is the room all discombobulated? So I started giving my presentation, and 4 o'clock Pacific in November, it starts getting dark. My presentation was over around 5, and by the time I was done, the ring light and the little bit of light it shone on my face was all there was. So it was a mostly dark room. I was like, I didn't plan on that.
Surprise.
And I had one technical glitch. So I'm working through my presentation, which went fine, by the way. And I got to a place where I'm supposed to do a demo. And so a slide pops up and says, blah, 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 demo time. And I click F, I hit the escape button on my laptop, and nothing happens. I'm expecting the PowerPoint to like go away. So I hit it again, and then again, nothing. A few more times.
You're panicking now.
Yes, I am panicking a bit. I'm like, So eventually I just look into the camera and I say, well, I guess I won't be able to do the demo because I can't lower the slides. I'll just tell you about the demo, which I did.
Imagine, if you will.
Yeah. Imagine SQL Server Management Studio on the screen with this really cool query that does some awesome things.
In dark mode.
Yeah. Oh, yes, in dark mode, of course. You said that because I don't use dark mode. I'm the rebel. Anyway.
Good for you.
So I explained the demo and I just keep moving. Well, in the meantime, the moderator for the online stream messages me and he said, "Hey, try using Alt Tab." Now, the kind of awkward thing about that was I'm on a laptop. So how many monitors do I have?
One.
Yeah, I got one monitor. So when I see this message pop up, I'm sharing my screen because that's how people are seeing the presentation. So I click and I quickly read what he says and then I drag it down to the bottom of the screen so it's not, people don't see that. When I got to the next demo slide, I tried Alt Tab and that worked beautifully because I already had SSMS up and loaded with the scripts I needed. So I did the demo I was planning to do at that point in the presentation. Then I went back and I did the other demo and stepped through it so people could see what that was about.
Yay, it worked out.
It did work out. I'm not gonna lie though, when that issue happened with the demo, it was unsettling, and it took me like probably 60 to 90 seconds to like settle back down and get out of the freak out mode
Yeah, I can
and
imagine.
get my words flowing again and get back into the rhythm of the particular presentation. So that was kind of disappointing, but overall, I felt like I handled it well. We should be getting, so every presentation at the end, we encourage people and know that they can do an evaluation. So soonish, I should be getting evaluation feedback from the summit. So
I'm
all in
sure.
all,
I'm sure the
great
feedback will be
experience.
great.
So any questions, comments, concerns about any of that? Anything you want to ask about? Anything I didn't cover that you're curious about?
No concerns. So you and apparently 399 other people did talks and sessions. Is there a place we can go to see that? Is that something that's going to be published eventually?
Yeah, great question. So right now, the recorded sessions, I think Redgate is working on making those available to people who already purchased the online sessions, either through the hybrid, like you were there in person, or the online conference. If you didn't purchase those, I don't know if they can be purchased after the fact. I don't know if the online recordings can be purchased after the fact. So if you did make a purchase, then you can just log in to the pastdatacommunitysummit.com with your regular login that you had been using, and then look through the schedule to find any recordings that you want to watch. Now, just before next year's summit, all of that material will be made publicly accessible. So that's how you would get to it.
Cool. That'd be great to see. Can you maybe we can drop a link in the comments to the site, as you said. You log in the way you used to. Some people this may be the first time they've been there, so we can definitely do that. Put a link in the comments for people to check out. Maybe we'll have more people show up next year, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Pretty cool. So, what was your favorite part, other than the food, other than dinner? What was your favorite part?
You took away my answer. Man, it's close because I want to say speaking because that's kind of a life goal. Well, it's not kind of. It has been a life goal for many years.
It was on the bucket list. Yeah.
On the bucket list. And so I'll have to say after speaking, it was the Tuesday night event. The welcome event was the most fun. It was, like I told you, there was the drum line and some people with cymbals and some other stuff and
arcade, basketball, and food.
Yeah, the arcade, the food, everybody's there. We're all laughing, having a good time. We're introducing ourselves to each other and catching up and all of that sort of stuff. That was really the most interesting and fun time. My favorite part of it was that particular community event. That's what I liked the best.
Does that word again? Community. All right. What was what is something that either surprised you or you learned? Or
Something
both.
that surprised me. What was that?
Or both.
Or
You
both?
can do both.
Okay. Um, I'll answer both questions. So the part that surprised me, even though we were warned, was how much walking was involved. And
They warned you, but you didn't believe them.
kind of, I mean, I thought I'm close to the convention center. Like, how much walking am I actually going to do?
It's right there.
It's right there. Part of it is part of the issue with the walking is if you don't give yourself enough time in the morning, then you're like rushing to get there. And if you're not, if exercise has not been your thing, then the rushing and the walking combined with all the walking you have to do the whole week is kind of a lot. So believe them when they warn you about there's lots of walking, because there really is, even though it's right there. Something I learned. I mean, I learned a lot. Well, I learned a lot of things.
Yeah. Name one thing that you learned, or name your favorite thing you learned, if that helps.
I think probably the favorite thing that I learned was all of the cool features that they're building into the query processor for SQL Server.
Mm-hmm.
So during Bob Ward's presentation on SQL Server 2022, he talked about intelligent query processing, which has kind of been a thing since SQL 2016 or 17. And they've been slowly adding things to intelligent query processing.
A little bit at a time, right? Which is
Right.
the right way to do it.
Absolutely. And so he talked about some features. There's persisted memory grant feedback in SQL Server 2022.
Right.
And that hinges on Query Store. All of the features I'm about to talk about briefly hinge on Query Store being enabled. And memory grant feedback has been around, but you can't persist it, because every time you restart SQL Server, everything SQL Server has done about memory grant is now wiped out. But with Query Store, it actually persists and records that information in the Query Store for the database where that memory grant feedback has been done. So anyway, the intelligent query processing, the discussion about that was one of the coolest things I feel like I learned at the summit.
Awesome. Next time, because you can go back next year, I'm going to make that assumption for you. Next year, what are you going to do different?
What will I do differently? Well, if I'm smart,
No. I see. What are you going to do differently? Just kidding.
Okay. I see how it is.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
So first of all, I'll take it seriously that there's a lot of walking. And as part of that, one of the things I would like to do anyway is just get myself a fitness routine. And so hopefully I'll arrive at Summit in better shape, so all of that walking won't impact me the same way it did this year. So that's number one thing. Take it seriously that there's lots of walking.
Sounds great. It sounds like you had a good time. Sounds like you learned a lot. You definitely met some people, interacted with the community. Did you have any closing thoughts or anything before we roll off?
I mean, to people who next year are going to be thinking about going, and you look at the price tag to go in person, it is kind of expensive. Some companies will help pay for that, or they will pay all of it. It never hurts to ask.
Oh yeah.
Show them the value. Like I told you earlier, the recordings are going to come out ahead of time. If you can get access to those recordings and watch them and show the value of the content of the summit, then that could help. The other thing is some of the presentations that were there, some people might give those same presentations or similar in the months ahead. And if you can catch those and show your boss those presentations and the things that you're learning from them, that will also help make a case that you should get to go. And I would encourage you to do the in-person summit if you can, but the online experience is there as well, and it is much cheaper. They do make a concerted effort to make the online experience good. There are, virtual, like there's a virtual community zone that you go into through a really cool program called Spatial Chat that I used last year. And it really is a great way for a bunch of people to get into a virtual room and have conversations. So
it's awesome. Sounds like a great thing. I'm glad you got the opportunity to go in person. Sounds like it was a life event. You got to cross some things off your bucket list, meet some celebrities, some sequel celebrities who put their pants on one leg at a time. I'm glad we clarified that.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, I'm a little jelly. Maybe I'll look into going some year if I get brave. But I think we're ready to call it a night.
Yeah, I think so. I really appreciate the opportunity to tell everybody about the Past Data Community Summit. Hit me up on the blog. Go visit that, leemarkham.com. You can find me on Twitter and on LinkedIn. If you have follow-up questions, I'm happy to answer those questions for you and give you some information. So,
yep. We'll make sure all that information's in the comment section below on the notes. And if those of you who are in Twitch, that's already been shared. So awesome. Well, good night, everybody. This is Race Said Data. I'm Anthony Fortner.
I'm Lee Markham, Database Administrator. Bye, everyone.
Good night, everybody.